Okay, welcome everybody. I think we're going to get started. So the story for today is going to be talks in the morning, and then we'll wrap up morning talks with a discussion, and then in the afternoon we'll set out into our breakup groups. Just a quick reminder for those of you who have expenses, envelopes, and forms up here, if you'd like to put them there. And then at the end of the day, we can collect them to take back to London, at least the ones you've acquired so far.
Yeah, and I'll be flying tomorrow morning, so tonight is last chance to give me receipts. Otherwise, we'll have to post them with Snail.
Yeah. Okay. So, we wanted to start off today talking about the results of this questionnaire we sent around, and basically we did this. This was not scientific. It wasn't sent through our review board. It isn't an official survey. Keep all of that in mind. It's not statistically valid data in any way. But we did kind of want to have a look at the landscape of what people are using. And what's coming up when people think about thesauri, glossaries, other vocabulary lists that they're using. So participation was pretty low, but we did get 30 responses. I think many of you around the table were responders to this, so thank you very much for that. 23 of the 30 participants were from conservators, and then there was a really good mix of other people who also completed the survey.
How many people did you send it to?
We posted it in various places. So we didn't send it out directly to anybody. It was more an invitation to fill out the survey, including as part of the registration for this workshop. So no direct solicitation. We might have gotten more responses if we had. So the first question was, well, we did ask about specialty, what kind of specialty groups people are in. And then we asked next, what type of documentation are people generating? And there were 3 answers, and people could answer more than one thing. So kind of what we'd expect out of such a high percentage of conservators, 23 people doing treatment documentation, then more with surveys assessment, and then finally the smaller group being scientific data and analysis. We were curious to know for people's documentation systems how much of it was tied in with a larger institutional framework as opposed to what you're doing standalone through your department not connected to the larger institution. And so we found about half and half, those who have kind of in-house use only or personal generation versus connected to the larger system. And then we got into this, which I found really interesting. Again, people could give multiple answers, but most people aren't using a specific controlled vocabulary, but rather by their experience. And then also, or using published thesauri or in-house developed glossaries. Getting into what are people using, in the general category, this is what we found. And I think it's really interesting that Cameo was at the top of the list. For those of you who aren't familiar with Cameo, it was created by the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. It's recently had a reinvigoration, and they've changed it recently to a wiki format, and it's kind of been revitalized. I think it's a really excellent resource. I like to use it. Especially when looking at materials and products and things like that, as opposed to conservation techniques. So I was really interested to see it was high up on the list, and then of course the Getty AAT, and then some other answers here. The largest group of responses and the largest group of responders and the largest group of participants here today are in the book and paper conservation field. So this is what we found for the ones people called out. And then there were several that only had one response, and I didn't put those on the screen just for keeping it quiet, just for keeping the screen pretty clear. If anybody wants a full list, just contact me. These will come up in the afternoon, because we assigned out the top answers to people to look at and to check. So we see some interesting and familiar names here. We had far fewer people respond to architecture, conservation, building sites, and movable heritage, and the only resource that got more than one vote was this, and I don't know how to pronounce this, Eulogloss? And then for the painting objects and textiles, again, the only one meeting two was this from CCI, their resource for condition reporting. Now, I mean, I think part of the low response here is just because we didn't have a lot of conservators in other fields responding to the survey. But I also think in our whole list, we may not have a comprehensive list of resources people may or may not be using. So we did a lot of research and we tried to pull together what we could find, but it could be that there are others, resources that we just didn't know about. So anyway, that is it. I think the main takeaway from this is it's really helped us for this afternoon in seeing what we would look at, and also for what is kind of rising to the top of the list of what people are using. So that's that. Now we're going to switch over to a presentation by Marcia. Oh, did anyone have any questions about that? I'm happy to answer questions. I think that's pretty self-explanatory.
I mean, one comment maybe is whether the fact that book and paper is disproportionately represented in this group is because conservators who work in a library context are perhaps more familiar with, or they feel more sort of comfortable with ideas around classification and description and so on. I mean, I don't know what people think, but it might be a possible reason.